Greetings and all salutations as they suit you. I'm Jacob with PsyborgAimes, and today we're going to talk about getting sidetracked by following the thread of events through a classic game, Tomba. You ever try to start one thing, a singular, simple task, only to find yourself hours later juggling 10 different things that have nothing to do with what you meant to be doing? I'm not talking about distraction, but the logical leaps that start with wiping down a bench and somehow end with going to the store for dog food when you don't even have a dog. This isn't a drop in motivation or giving up. It's just that the original thread got lost somewhere in the noise. And it isn't necessarily a failure of you. It often reflects a predictable cognitive pattern. And who better to talk about sidetracking than Tomba? Tomba is a platformer where you explore a strange, playful world, helping people by completing lots of small interconnected tasks. The game starts with the titular character entering from stage right, intent on getting his grandpa's bracelet back. Almost immediately, you're given more tasks, and each one you complete opens yet more. This creates a compelling gameplay loop, or at least taps into something a bit compulsive. The world is bright, light, and colourful. While there are enemies, there's no impending danger, just chaos. Nothing feels urgent, but nothing ever feels finished either. And the game never tells you you're doing it wrong. There's no warning when you drift, no timer counting down, no punishment for taking a detour. You move because something caught your attention, and the world reshapes itself around that choice. And over time, something subtle starts to happen. The map doesn't feel like a place you're traveling through, it feels like a list that keeps growing. Areas you've already visited don't feel complete, they feel pending. You remember the thing you couldn't do yet, the door you couldn't open, the person who asked for help that you half finished. Even when you move forward, part of your attention stays behind, quietly tracking what's still unresolved. The game never pressures you to clean this up, but it also never clears it for you. So progress becomes layered. You're advancing, but you're also carrying a growing mental inventory. Not of items, but of intentions. Things you meant to come back to, and that weight builds because the permissive nature of so many options can be harder to handle than hostility. And that's not even getting started on the possibility of locking yourself out of 100% completion if you do some things too quickly. This tension, no urgency and no completion, comes from everything feeling equally relevant. What's interesting is that effort doesn't resolve this. Doing more doesn't reduce the number of open loops. It often creates more. Progress doesn't close doors, it opens side paths. Lamentably, there is confusion in the coherence. All of these side paths make sense in relation to each other. They're connected. They're internally consistent. So there's no obvious point where your brain flags, this is the wrong thing. Instead, everything stays plausible. The task you're doing now feels reasonable. The one you just noticed also feels reasonable. And because neither one feels incorrect, the only thing that drops away is priority. The mind doesn't experience this as losing focus. It experiences it as staying responsive, which is why it can feel so uncomfortable to stop. Not because you're avoiding the goal, but because stopping feels like ignoring something relevant. That's the trap. The chaos that comes with too many options at once. The ultimate goal is to get the bracelets back, but we almost never talk about it. First, you've got to find an old man, but you get dumped into a pond. So now, you also want to learn how to swim. And there's this AP box taunting you. Just a few more points until you can open it. What's with all this cheese? No one said you had to do these things. No one is rushing you to help the people who ask. And yet, it feels important. Mandatory even. Nothing has gone wrong. And yet, the original goal keeps slipping out of reach. For a lot of people, especially my neurodivergent peeps, this is just what life feels like. Some people experience this occasionally. A busy day, a tired brain, too many tabs open at once. But for others, this isn't an exception. It's the default setting. The way the mind responds to tasks doesn't clearly distinguish between what's important and what's just there. Everything gets ranked the same. When everything feels equally urgent, there's no obvious way to decide what comes next. And every attempt to do something creates more opportunities for noise. Completing tasks doesn't always bring satisfaction, so there's no real sense of being done either. It becomes a perpetual cycle of side quests. There's something exhausting about this kind of loop. Not because you're lazy, not because you're careless, but because your attention keeps being pulled towards things that matter, even if they weren't part of the original plan. You're not avoiding the main task, you're responding to relevance as it appears. And when the world keeps offering you meaningful threads to follow, the cost isn't effort, it's orientation. Over time, that can create a strange internal tension. You're doing things, you're helping, you're moving, and yet this background hum of, I never quite got back to what I meant to do. It's not because you failed to commit, but the landscape just kept changing under your feet. Sometimes you're not missing discipline or clarity or motivation. Sometimes it's just that you need a place to pause long enough to remember which thread you are holding, and that pause may feel unsafe. When you've learned to orient yourself by movement, stillness becomes a risk. Because the moment you stop, all the unfinished threads become more visible. The things you didn't finish, the things you didn't return to, the things you still care about, but haven't touched yet. So it makes sense that the system prefers forward momentum, even when that momentum isn't clearly directed. While it can feel like avoiding responsibility, it's about protecting yourself from the feeling of being surrounded by unresolved relevance. Which is why gentleness matters here. So you can maintain your orientation when the map keeps changing under your feet. If this feels familiar, welcome to the club. When everything feels like do or die, prioritizing stops being a skill problem and starts becoming a load problem. Losing the thread of a task doesn't mean you don't care. It often means there are simply too many things to care about at the same time. Finding your way back isn't something you force. And it's not something you beat yourself into. It's noticing you drop the string and then just picking it up from wherever you are now. And if your life feels unfinished, looping, like a collection of half-resolved threads, that doesn't mean you're failing. It means you're operating in a system that keeps offering you more than one mind can comfortably hold. In Tomba, the world doesn't collapse because you wandered. It just keeps offering more paths. Maybe the question isn't why you keep getting pulled into quests, but how you want to relate to them. If conversations like this feel helpful, you're welcome to subscribe or say hi in the comments. And if there's a game you'd like me to explore next, let me know. Thanks for being here, rest gently, and be kind to your mind.